This is inspired by
Billie.
Listen to the sound of the rain, sleep away the pain, counting every spin, all my sheep are sins. Where were you? Where were you? Dinner's on the table, would you say that I'm stable? You got me thinking, where do you go while I'm at home? Sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think of me? Does it set you free? What do you do when I'm alone? What do you do when I'm alone?
Just wanna know. Just wanna know.
Listen, you know I trust you, hoping that's not new, but my head is diving deep, mermaids in my sleep. You got me thinking.
Hey guys, Jacob Dupre here at Sweetwater. Today I'm going to be talking about the music of Billie Eilish, specifically the production in her songs. So her and her brother work as a team, Phineas O'Connell and Billy O'Connell, Billie Eilish being her stage name. And they've created some music just in the bedroom in their house that they grew up that's taken pop music by storm. So today I want to talk about their songs, some techniques that you can use to bring their style into your music. The first thing you heard was my original song, which is called When I'm Alone, and it was inspired by the sound of Billie Eilish's music. But before I get into breaking that song down and showing you what I did, I want to just show you some of the basic plugins I use to kind of get that Eilish sound. And I worked between a couple DAWs. I started in Ableton, messed around with some beats in there and some of the plugins, but then eventually I moved to Logic because I'm especially comfortable with editing audio, especially voice audio in Logic. So that just made more sense for me to work there. But a good point to make is that these plugins I'm going to show you, these basic ones, they're about the same in every DAW. So no matter what DAW you use or which one you're interested in, if you already have experience in something, you can stay there because you'll be comfortable writing music there. But yeah, easily accessible things that you can do in just about any program. So let's go ahead and start with Ableton, and I want to show you a couple of these plugins that helped me get closer to that kind of Eilish sound, right? The first plugin I'm going to show you is AutoPan, and I know if you guys are fans of Billie's music, you know her song Bad Guy, her first song to go to #1, huge song. And there's that part where she says bad guy at the end of every chorus, and you hear that kind of sound like she's singing into a fan. The way you can get that sound, other than singing into a fan, is by using AutoPan. So right now, I'm going to show you the basics of how that works. So here I just have this synth sound that's playing one note, right? Really boring. Well, not boring, it's a cool sound, but not a lot going on to it, right? So if you wanted to spice it up kind of in that Eilish way, you might add an AutoPan to it. So basics of what AutoPan is doing is it's taking the sound and making it go from left to right at whatever rate you set it. So whatever speed, it's going back and forth left to right. So again, if you really want to hear this, and I'd say for this entire video, you should be listening on headphones or speakers, because to hear something traveling in that stereo spread like that, you need to have a left-right source of some type. So let's check that out with the AutoPan engaged. So you hear how it's going back and forth? I'm going to slow it down a little bit so you can really hear that. When you turn the amount up, you can really hear it. So when now you think back to that part of Bad Guy where she's saying, bad guy, it's a really fast AutoPan, right? So if you turn the rate up even higher, right? So that's just a general idea of that plugin. The other thing that I kind of discovered you have to know how to use in a specific way to kind of get closer to that Eilish sound is reverb, right? Or the absence of it. So it's a pretty standard thing for most producers, like kind of just general advice, is like, yeah, you put a little bit of reverb on the vocals, probably on the other instruments, maybe you bust them together and you send them all to one spot where you can put the reverb on all of them. But a lot of times, and Phineas, Billy's brother, won't put any reverb. They like the sound of that kind of dry voice. In his words, it's kind of a very intimate sound. So when I started working on my song, I started in Ableton, and I was messing around just with the stock sounds in there. A good point to make about Phineas, the brother, he produced a lot of this music just with the stock sounds that were in the DAW, right? So in the beginning, they didn't have a ton of money. You know, they didn't have like a full studio. They just were making music in their bedroom, and he did it with a lot of stock sounds and plugins. So that just shows you how much you can do with just a DAW, right? So I just started with Ableton and dragged in this 909 kit and started messing around with beats and playing around, and I kind of came up with this that I liked. I liked that, but eventually I kind of thought it was a little too busy, so I stripped it down to just this. But then I kind of started messing around with plugins. I added some compression to it. Let me get that back in that spot. So kind of change the sound there. And then I decided to add a phaser to it. And then auto pan. So when I turned the auto panner on and messed with some of the settings on the auto pan and the phaser, and then turned a decay up on the kick, I heard that pitch come out in the kick drum, and I liked that, and that kind of started to spur some songwriting ideas. After working in Ableton, I exported that drum sound I was working on and brought it into Logic, but I kind of tweaked it a little bit more. I took the snare drum sound out and just left the bass drum because I really liked that. That was kind of like a sound that kind of piqued my interest. So I liked how subtle that sound was. Something I like about Billy's music is that it's what a lot of people would say minimalist, right? It's very simple, a lot of the music. And so a lot of times starting with something subtle or just one instrument or one sound is a good way to approach writing in her style. So that sound kind of sent me in the right direction. But let's get into some of those plugins I was talking about. So you might remember that part of the song. I guess you kind of say it's my pre-chorus, getting into the chorus. So started about right here.
Dinner's on the table, would you say that I'm stable?
No.
Right? Okay. So that was kind of definitely inspired by the sound in Bad Guy that I was talking about, where she has that real low voice. It's like her voice mixed in with the lower voice, right? And then that auto pan thing on there. So that's what's on this sound right here. So it's just me saying no in a normal voice, but I pitch shifted it and added a vocal transformer. So here's what it sounds just by itself.
No.
Right, so that's basically the dry sound, right? There's no reverb on it either, so I wanted that to be real dry and stark, just like a lot of her vocal sound. But then when you add, and in Logic it's called tremolo, you can hear this pan.
No.
So here it gives that kind of like creepy thing back and forth. And now if I add that vocal transformer and I add the pitch shift on there,
No.
it's got that real monster sound. And I like that. She likes to do that in a lot of her songs. Another one, When the Party Is Over, there's a part like that. She likes to use these big silences. Silence is like very important in her music. And there's this part where you just hear like this growled vocal line come in, right? So that's starting to get into like kind of the nuances of her sound. I really liked the sound of that very like pure choir sound behind the vocal. And that's something else that's definitely a direct inspiration on me from Billie. Definitely in When the Party's Over, that that song's a huge inspiration for the kind of layered choir effect, the vocal effect I was going for. But even in Bad Guy, you can hear in the verses where, you know, it might start with just one voice or very simple texture, and then you hear these other voices coming in, singing different harmony lines, and it builds kind of into this thing. It's a really cool way to like build drama without having to be loud, right? And that's something that's cool about her music, is it's overall simple and kind of minimalist, but there's still layers going on that adds this excitement and like this unique sound.
To the sound of the rain, sleep away the pain.
And again, talking about how simple the way they produce music, the way Phineas produces, that's why I went for just voices with piano. And I really liked that because you can really, the voice really takes center stage, and you hear those harmonies and you hear that choir sound. And that's what her music is really focused on, is that vocal sound, right? That's really important.
You got me thinking, where do you go while I'm at home? Sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you?
See, it sounds like you're just in the room, right? And I recorded that really close mic, so that's what you call close mic. That's basically you just get as close to the mic as you can with this mic right here, actually, the FET 47. And that's something that's very important to getting kind of that Eilish sound. The reason why is because you want to pick up all those kind of little nuances of the voice, like, you know, even your lips opening or closing, and the way you breathe or the way your mouth moves. There's all those extra little sounds that get picked up. You can definitely hear it just in this right here.
Sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think of me?
You can hear all those little, the way that I'm pronouncing my words. A lot of times you won't hear all of that stuff, right? And because you're kind of from a more typical distance. Something that can help you pick up even more of those sounds is being in like an isolation booth, right? Or you could sing into a corner, basically sing into any space that's making more of the sound you make from here stay centered on the microphone, and it's going to have that sound kind of like you're inside of a box, right? There's a few other things in these two sections that I can definitely draw I drew some inspiration from their music. So if you start here in the verse,
to the sound of the rain, sleep away the.
They like to use, one thing I love about what they do is they have these basic kind of very simple, I'd say simple kind of synth sounds, right? So a lot of times the bass is like a very kind of simple sub bass. They really like to err on the low frequency side of things, where a lot of music today has like very high popping, high frequency stuff. A lot of their music's very chill, sort of sound spectrum wise. So they like to use that low bass, and then they'll use these like really simple little synth lines. And something I loved from When the Party's Over is I think it's in the main verse part, there's kind of in the gaps, again, those silences in between the lyrics, there's like this really cool little auto-tuned line that comes in. It kind of, to me, sounds like it's like a vocal processor that's kind of making it sound like a voice and like a synth at the same time. So I wanted to kind of capture that, and that idea of having a vocal chorus and then a silence that's filled just by a very simple little synth line, right? So that's right here.
To the sound of the rain, sleep away the pain.
And then towards the end, I did it again.
Where were you? Dinner's on the table, would you say that I'm stable?
And there's a little bit of me with that kind of bluesy thing, because if you guys watch my videos, you know I'm a little bit of a jazz fan, so I do like having that bluesy kind of gospel thing in there. But you can hear at the very end, and something else I like that they do with her vocals is how it's layered, and how all of a sudden a layer will come in all of a sudden and kind of accent just one word or two words, right?
Dinner's on the table, would you say that I'm stable?
So that's what I did there. You hear stable, right? And you can see I have quite a few layers, which I'm sure their projects end up looking like because they layer Billie's voice a lot. So I have this vocal choir down here. Let's just listen to those.
Stable.
And now again, using that kind of big space, right? Silence is so important in her music. So right after the verse,
Say that I'm stable. You got me thinking.
and then you get that creepy kind of bad guy, like monster vocal effect that comes in that silence. And then for the chorus, I don't have more going on than just a simple drum kit, the bass, like kind of a sub bass kind of sound.
You got me thinking, where while I'm at home, sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think of me? Does it set you free? What?
This is also a great time to talk about something else that's huge in their music and what gives them a lot of personality in their production is their use of Foley Sounds, which you would call Foley Sounds. And the way they do it is with a Tascam recorder. So I decided to get my own, right? I even tried stuff like recording my car starting and just anything that I thought might be interesting. And I pulled in a lot of those sounds into this project. And something really unique and cool that they do in their music that Phineas does is figure out how to use those sounds, those real sounds, both in a musical way and rhythmic ways and also just as textures, right, as noises. So they famously have used the sound of a drill, right, that they recorded when Billie went to the dentist. They went into their bathroom in their house and recorded themselves lighting matches, and that ended up in some of their music. So these real sounds are, I mean, it immediately sets them apart and makes their music unique. Now the snare drum, I said snare drum, it's actually not a snare drum. It's me cracking my knuckles, like that. And actually that was perfect timing because I hadn't done it yet. So check out the track. Yeah, I just called it Crack Fingers. So here's my snare drum. Some of the other Foley sounds in here that I use that are interesting. I recorded the sound of my phone causing interference in my monitors in my office. So during this part, so that's, you know, it's a sound most musicians famously will hate because that means somebody's phone's on is interfering, right? But I was like, why not turn it into a musical texture? So I put it underneath the, when I'm saying, yeah, just want to know. Now for the next verse, I definitely went a little bit more like hip hop, right? And the beat comes in, you get a little bit more of that like hip hop kit sound. And I added another little synth line over it, but still kept it very simple.
Listen, you know I trust you, hoping that's not new. But my head is diving deep, mermaids in my sleep. You got me thinking, where do...
So see, last time I filled that space, that silence with a sound, with that vocal part. That time, left it completely silent. And that's something that's so cool about Billie's music, is when they use complete silence as an effect. Her music is just about drawing you in and being expressive. And so that's the fun of using big silences like that. Now that sound you heard right there, this is the sound of a jet taking off, that I just kind of automated to increase right at the end. You heard it for the first time in the very beginning of the song right here. And I was inspired by reading about how Phineas used the sound of an RPG being fired in one of his songs. And I thought that was really awesome because a lot of times producers, you know, you're looking for like the best either risers, like a riser sound that'll get you into a next big part of a song, like these sort of transitional sounds like that. But a lot of times he's just like, I'll use a real sound and just make my own unique effect out of it, and then I don't have to use a plugin. And I think it works really well. So we talked about auto panning a little bit and making it a really fast auto pan, so you hear that kind of singing into a fan effect. But something else you'll notice Billie does in her music with the production is sending things back and forth, left, right, but in a slower pace, right? So a lot of times it'll be something that's rhythmic, that's hitting left and then hitting right, or you hear, you know, this one kind of vocal line come in on the right and one come in on the left. So just kind of, that's more like kind of a traditional just approach to panning. So check out this breath sound that I recorded, and it's just me breathing real close into the mic. And I liked that breath sound, but then I thought, why don't I try to do a panning thing where it travels from left to right? So when you turn that on, and a little bit of EQ to take that low end out, which I did for most everything except for like the sub bass and the kick drum. So see how simple that was? That's literally one of the simplest things to set up. You know, you could automate that, so you could automate it, you know, going all the way left and all the way right. But I just had this tremolo plugin, they call it, in Logic, and figured out how to set it up at a rate that would send it back and forth each time. And I thought that was really cool over the chorus as well.
You go while I'm at home, sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think of me? Does it...
Something else that you might notice is that auto pan is back, right? But it's on the main vocal this time, and I've automated it in. So if I go to the Tremolo Depth, you can see these little bumps here. And again, this is something you could do in any DAW. This is a pretty simple function. So let's just check this out, just the vocal in the chorus.
Sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think...
So you heard that? So here's with no tremolo.
On the floor with my phone.
You can also hear me kind of like clack my tongue here.
On the floor with...
Which I probably necessarily wouldn't have wanted to do, but I kind of liked it, so I left it. So here's with that automation, that auto pan sound.
With my phone, do you think of me? Does it say you read? What do you do when I'm alone? What?
So it was just a way to kind of take the sound that I got from this and put it in there. I was definitely inspired by her song Zanny, where you hear this auto pan come in that's set at the frequency of the bass. So it gives this, like, again, it's that singing into a fan sound. So I thought, well, how can I incorporate that into my main vocal and into those kind of secondary vocal parts? You can also hear in the choir part. So there's this choir that backs up the main vocal that comes in with these little, kind of, it's like a call and response thing, right?
You go while I'm at home, sitting on the floor.
So that, I like in her music when, and I definitely hear this in Bad Guy, where you hear vocal parts, right? But there are some parts that are kind of layered in with the choir that are almost semi-spoken. Some of them may be sung kind of lazily, and it kind of gives us this really kind of like sort of lighthearted, kind of funny sound, but like really cool because it's that combination of like sung vocals in with kind of like an unsung thing. So in this chunk here, with all these vocal overdubs, so most of them are just me singing, right? But I've got this one that is just me going like this, right? And most of the vocals are panned out to the sides too. In general, you know, you want your main vocal kind of in the center, taking up a lot of space there, and then having your choir sort of surrounding it. So let's talk about that piano sound I'm using.
You go while I'm at home, sitting on the floor with my phone. Do you think of...
And again, you say like, what's that jazz piano stuff? That's not very Eilish. Okay, well that's a little bit of me. That's me putting a little bit of my personal taste with music in there. So I didn't have an acoustic piano, but I wanted a piano that had like a very intimate kind of sound, right? That was kind of unique. So I went with Alicia's Keys, a piano that was recorded. It's her piano in her studio, in her home studio, and it has a lot of nuance and a lot of character to it. So I thought it was a good sort of way to get, you know, it's obviously not the same as recording an upright in a room, but it gave a unique sound. So here's just the piano sound. And that intro, which I think kind of has a little bit of Alicia in it. So I kind of wanted that real, you know, intimate kind of sound that Billie's music has when it'll start with just a guitar and voice, or just a ukulele, or just a piano, or whatever acoustic instrument with voice it is. So I wanted to have that, as much as possible, have that kind of like organic, simple sound. It's a really cool plugin. You can hear that it's not dry, so it's got a little bit of that character to it. It sounds like it's in a room, you know? I want to leave you with some advice and also some challenges that I've run into with writing in this style, taking this minimal approach. At least from my personal experience, I find when producing songs, I like adding things. When you're writing a song and you feel like you've got the lyrics down and you've got that done, A lot of times your inclination, especially if you're good with MIDI instruments, you're a good keyboard player, you have some experience writing music, you want to keep adding layers, you want to keep adding instruments. But the challenge with this is to keep it simple. And that's what makes her style so unique. So if that's a sound you want to start trying to bring into your own work, you have to challenge yourself to not add, right? Phineas has said when he's producing their music, they'll keep adding stuff until it doesn't help anymore. So essentially, if they add a thing and it sounds good, they'll keep adding it. If they add another and it sounds good, they'll keep going. They'll keep adding things until it's starting to take away, right? And the results of practicing that way end up making really good music. And I think that actually, whether you're writing in a minimalist way or you're writing for an orchestra or whatever, that's a good philosophy to keep is, don't add another thing if it's not going to help the music, right? Because it's all about the music. And a good thing to keep in mind is you never really want to try to sound exactly like someone else, right? Because the whole point of being an artist, or especially if you're a producer, you've got the bedroom studio and you're making your own music and your own sound, you want to stay unique to you. And this song definitely has a lot of me in it. A lot of my experience with the keyboard, playing piano, and other styles that I'm into. But I was inspired by the sound of Billie Eilish's music and found some things that I could fit in there. So it's really more important to take away how you can take the sound of another artist that inspires you and meld it with your own thing rather than try to copy it exactly. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's inspired you to check out Billie's music if you haven't already and figure out how to bring that into your own style, into your own songwriting. If you have any of your own thoughts about her music, maybe something you've noticed about her production or what you like about the way she writes her songs or the way they produce the songs, please comment that below. But all in all, I hope this has inspired you and I hope you keep trying new things and writing music. Thanks for watching.